Welcome guys to an episode with the Doomed Hell. Today we're going to be talking about the used GPU buying guide in November of 2023. So a lot of you guys are probably looking at Black Friday deals and looking at potentially getting an Amazon virtual deal, and I'm here to tell you that that is not a bad idea. In 2023 we have a lot of great new selection in terms of GPUs, and they're getting very very powerful in the low end. But I'm here to say that the used GPU market is looking still very juicy. So if you guys didn't know, the number one factor for GPU mining and GPU use prices is, generally speaking, the Ethereum mining. So here we have a very nice graph of the last 5 years, and you'll see that right around 2019 is when a lot of the GPUs were getting very expensive, and the fact is that it's because Ethereum mining made a lot of sense for GPU buyers. And then around 2020, it started making more sense because the BTC went up, and Ethereum had a pretty good conversion rate for it. And but as we can see, the Bitcoin halving, which happened around here, really dipped the value of Ethereum. And this happened once again in 2021. Now we have some very stable mining and very low mining overall in the last 5 years, which is why now Ethereum has really calmed down, and at its current level, it is basically impossible to make any money off of the 40 series graphics cards, and why, for instance, the 4080s were not sold out right from the bat, which is what happened with the 3080s. So that's a little bit of history for you. Nowadays, the used GPU market has really stabled itself, and it's been dropping extremely consistently. So we can easily look at these numbers and kind of figure out what kind of GPU we want. So today we're going to get into some categories. The gaming and work category is going to be the primary task for today. Sub 300, sub 500, sub 800. And then we're also going to be looking at maxed out 4K gaming, which is going to be kind of your new GPU category. Then we might look at some video editing rigs, and I will just basically quickly summarize what you should be looking at for that. So some of the things to consider when you're buying a used GPU, the very first thing you should consider is to buy in the cities. If you have a city such as Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal that is nearby, I would consider trying to buy graphics cards in that area. If you're a little further out, I would consider buying your graphics card when you're going on vacation, getting closer to the city. That is your best time to buy. The next consideration is to buy an X pre-built or an X Bitcoin mining card. These are your best bets to get really cheap deals, maybe like $200, like literally the price knocked off $200 because someone Bitcoin mined it at some point. Of course, these kinds of cards, you're going to have to do some testing, understand like what's going on with these cards, what's like their faults, and there might be some more benchmarking that might happen while you're testing them. The next is liquid cooling. So liquid cooling is a very good way to get a card and make sure that you're getting the most out of its performance. So if the card is liquid cooled, it has a water block on it, or if you want to buy a water block on AliExpress, Amazon, whatever it may be, that is a good way to get very good performance out of it, even though it might be an X Bitcoin miner or an X pre-built card. So these are some things to consider. Now, some negatives that you have to consider in 2023 that really wasn't talked about very often before was driver support, very top-end driver support. Because a lot of the AMD cards used to have extremely good driver support, nowadays are actually dropped. So for instance, a lot of the GCN cards are just completely dropped. You might get some good luck with the RX 580 or RX Vega, but of course, even some low-end RDNA cards are getting really bad driver, like crippling driver issues. And this is also what killed the king of used GPUs, which was the GTX 1080 Ti. For a very long time, the Ti was the number one card to suggest to anyone because of its raw VRAM performance. And now it's just no longer the case because the drivers are really crippling the card. The next subject is, back with the TI subject, the VRAM bandwidth of your card. How much bandwidth are you getting? It's no longer just about how much VRAM you have. It's also about what you can do with it. So a lot of these new cards, such as like the RTX 3050, which has 8 GB of VRAM, actually has really bad, really crippling VRAM bandwidth and is getting destroyed by 6 GB cards very easily. So that's another thing to consider. And finally is the length of usage. How long did someone use it? Because if it's an ex Bitcoin miner or an ex pre-built card, these cards might have had 6 months, 12 months of online usage time, and this could be very bad for the VRMs that are on the card, and you might get a card that becomes a dud eventually. So this is all things that to consider right now, and I do think that it's a very good preliminary to get into. Do research every single one of these topics that I talk about today, and make sure that you can find exactly the deal that you're looking for. So we're going to start with the sub $300 category. Now this is a category that has very extensively been talked about in the past. I've personally talked about it a lot in the past. Some of the GCN videos I've made, some of the old used GPU buying guides I've made, and generally speaking, I feel as though in 2023 you should be looking between a card between $200 and $300 to start with. Anything under that, and you're gonna start getting real duds, stuff that's not gonna run the games you're gonna want. Yeah, maybe it'll run Fortnite at 720p, 900p, but that's pretty much the extension of that. If you're looking for 1080p gaming with fairly high FPS just to be able to game, I consider the RX 5700 and 5700 XT to be the gold rush of these kinds of cards. So here we have an RX 5700 XT for $180, and this is a triple fan. It's one of the nicer cards that they ever produced, and it will allow you to overclock these cards to well over its performance figures. So this is something I would consider a gem, something I'd be looking out for. If I saw this nearby of my place, I would 100% click yes, buy this. This is a great card. It still runs all the games at 1080p, very high FPS, and when it came out, it was an absolute beast. It competed with the RTX 2070 and 2080 cards. Nowadays, it's more in the 3060 Ti range, which is still excellent. And it's kind of like 4060 performance for quite a lot less. Or should I say 4060 Ti performance, sorry, when that does come out. It's not quite 4070 performance, but it is getting there. Now, if you're looking more towards an NVIDIA card, I would consider buying an RTX 2060 Super. Now, the Super, although it's 2060, 6 gigabytes, not very good. The Super actually has an 8 gigabyte. It's the 8 gigabyte variant that has much faster VRAM bandwidth on top of that. And these cards can be very easily overclocked to levels of performance that are close to RX 5700 XT. Now, I have seen these cards between $180 and $250. I would not be paying more than that, and I think that they're pretty decent for what they are. They're going to use less wattage than the RX 5700 cards, and they're going to be a little better at some gaming tasks over the RX 5700. The 5700 is more of the raw performance, the raw horsepower. This one is more of the nimble and economical aspect of the card. Now, obviously, if you do find a 3060 12 gigabyte variant for better price than this one, it might be something to consider just because of the newer drivers and the less usage on the card. But the 2060 Super will actually outclass the regular 3060 because of its VRAM bandwidth, and this is again that topic I was talking about. So the 2060 Super would be better in raw performance, I would argue. So that's the card I would say. Now, if you're going at the top end, you're willing to spend a little bit more than $300. A lot of us are. I believe the new king that is going to come on the block is the RTX 2080 Ti. So this is a card that has a lot more VRAM bandwidth than the other two, 11 gigabytes instead of 8 or 6 in some cases, and it will have the bandwidth to support the actual VRAM, so that's something to consider. It's also a card that absolutely outclasses the 5700 XT. It'll outclass 6700 cards in many applications, and so it really pushes the envelope on what you can do with it. Now, obviously, it's going to eat quite a lot more wattage. This is a top-end card versus some mid-ranger cards, but for $350, this is not too shabby at all. and I would definitely pick this up if I ever found one. Of course, this is a hidden gem. If you can't find it, don't knock yourself down. You're still going to get pretty good performance. And so long as you run your games, such as Fortnite, at decent FPS and 1080p, I consider this a winner card. Now let's go into the sub $500 category. Now, if you're looking for really high FPS, potentially running no DLSS, just raw FPS, 1080p, or maybe some 1440p in some single player games, even some 4K. If you're running 4K and you're trying to get 60, 80 FPS, this category will be absolutely acceptable, and in some cases it'll be even overkill. So the first graphics card I want to talk about, this is a X pre-built card. It's a little bit safer than if you ran a X Bitcoin miner card, and this is the RTX 3080 10GB card. So obviously you get a little bit less VRAM than the 2080 Ti, but this makes up with its raw performance and its raw bandwidth. Again, the bandwidth, I keep talking about this, but it is true. So this card uses a dual fan setup, and it is going to give you quite a bit of bang for buck when it comes to its stock performance. But obviously the 3080s were really good at overclocking, and this is something you're going to want to check out with your card. So this is why I consider this a very a good deal, bargain card to start with, and I think that it'd be worth trying to nudge the price closer to $400 so that you can afford buying a water block. So with some research, I've determined that the 3080s and 3090 cards from Dell are compatible with a lot of the OEM water blocks that you might be looking at, plus or minus some shaving of the block. So it is possible you might mod the water block a little bit, but it is definitely possible to put on a OEM 3080, 3090 water block on top of a Dell RTX 3080 card. And I would strongly consider anyone to look into this to make sure that they can do it, because although it will cost you quite a lot to start with a radiator and obviously your pump and your reservoir combo, once you get that set up, in the future, you're going to start getting a lot of overclocking headroom, and you're going to save a lot of money on your wattage in your PC. So this is something I would consider doing. And even if you don't want to do it right now, it's a good investment. You buy this right now, if you play a lot of games, this is really good. Again, 1080p, 1440p on Ultra, and eventually getting that water block on it is going to give you maxed out performance for the 3080s. So if you're looking at something similar to this, but on the AMD side, the RX 6800 XT is an absolute no-brainer. $525 gets you 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Of course, not the same as 10 gigabytes of GDDR6X. That's way faster in terms of memory bandwidth, but 16 gigabytes is incredible if you're trying to run AI applications. So these cards were not mined so much on it because the RTX 30 series were a little bit better for Bitcoin mining. But with the RX 6800 XT, what you get is quite a lot of raw bandwidth, raw power. These cards can be easily overclocked way past 2200 megahertz core, and they had VRAM overclock, which was something that the 6900 XT never got. So the 6800 XT, because of that, is a very, very good deal, very bargain deal. If we consider, like, for instance, a 2080 Ti, $350, we're getting almost 40% more performance for about $100 more. So this is something that I definitely consider checking out. This is probably the easy pick in this category, and it's not an easy category to start with because, again, you're kind of munching on some of the new GPUs that you might be getting, such as a 4070 Ti and a 7800 XT. This is kind of the same performance as the 7800 XT, plus or minus the overclocking, plus or minus some of the cards you might get, the new cards you might get, and obviously you won't get warranty on this, but again, great value. You're saving $200, $300, and you don't pay tax. So I've talked about these categories. One card I haven't talked about is potentially getting an RTX 3080 X mining card. You might even get a 3080 Ti in this category for $400. Should you do this? I think you should absolutely consider this deal. If you ever find bulk cards in a box of cards and the guy's just selling them, at absolutely low prices, I think you should try to go and see the guy and check out if these cards are worth it. a lot of the times these cards, there are at least one of them that is still a gem that still works even at stock clocks would be something to consider, because you might be saving $100, $200, $300 and getting about the same performances as what you would expect with a Dell. So that's why I would consider that a better deal. Yeah, obviously if you want to go a little safer, you could get this card, the 6800 XT, but again, there's that comparison. You get a wider selection than if you were to buy a new GPU. Now let's look at the sub $800 category. It's really the first time that you could be talking about this category, as previously it just wasn't doable, right? Nowadays we can actually start talking about it, because before these $1,600 cards were just coming out, and when you were buying them used, nobody really knew where the prices should lie, and so a lot of the times they were just trying to sell the card at the new GPU prices. But now that we really have a lot more cards on the market, we see that a lot of the cards are heading towards the sub $800 category. So if you're trying to buy a card that is 50% off from a year ago, from 2 years ago, it's about almost 70% off, this is the category I consider. And the first picked on this is a X Bitcoin miner. This is a RTX 3090, very good card, the ROG version, the Strix, and it's at $630. So already off the back, I said sub $800. This card used to be almost $1,700 card, and we're looking at it for $600. So that is a lot of saving for a beautiful card. 24 gigabytes of VRAM, absolute overkill, will run anything 4K, and with obviously very good RTX performance. And it is for an absolute bargain, almost much better than actually the RX 6800 XT in terms of just price to performance. Now, obviously, the real challenge is seeing if it actually works properly. So running Unigen Heaven, running Furmark, running all these benchmarks that will actually stress out the core is something I definitely suggest doing before buying this card. But something that looks really great, I double checked that the buyer is a proper man, a proper person, and I double checked that he has sold multiple items before. So this is 100% a legit buy. Now, is it going to be a legit card? That's another story. Now, if you're going for something a little safer and you're trying to look at the AMD side, you have the RX 6900 XT. This one is a Sapphire Toxic. It is one of the best cards, and look at that, $700. So even though this has not been mined on, this one is just a gaming card that the guy bought way back in the day. What do I mean back in the day? I mean, a year and a half ago, let's say. It's still going to be a very good deal. I mean, only you're saving about, here you're paying $70, and it's not a mining card. It's got still very good VRAM. It's a 16 gigabyte card. Can you VBIOS flash it to a 6950 XT to get that extra VRAM bandwidth? It's possible, but the real kicker here is that you're getting the same amount, almost the same amount of performance as the 3090 for about the same amount of money. And this card is going to be, have better mileage, let's say. Now, the 3090 would be a better deal if you were to do AI. If you are a guy that's trying to get into CUDA mining, CUDA performance, you're trying to look into Python programming, and you're trying to get into that kind of stuff, the 3090 is going to be a much better card. However, the 6900 XT, what really sets it apart from the 3090 is its absolute overclocking performance. This is a 2700 megahertz card, and it will do it out of the air-cooled variant. This won't do that at all. So that's something to consider. And I think this is quite a gem, something you should really look into if you were considering the 6800 XT, but you could actually afford something a little nicer. This is literally its big brother, and it is a perfect card. And I'll be talking about some new GPUs that really compare against this thing. Finally, this is the very last card I'm going to talk about in the use category. This is a RTX 3090 FE card. So it's an OEM, it's got an OEM VRM on it, but it comes with a full thermal take liquid cooled setup. So this thing is an absolute bargain deal for someone that is looking for getting into liquid cooling. So if you want a very powerful card that will get you the performance, it's not a sketch card. This is definitely a gaming card, a card that was gamed on, and you want to get a thermal take, full reservoir pump, and a water block setup. This is the one to get. And the benefit is that although it's $900, we're talking about a sub 800 category, but this is a $900 card. You're paying $100, but think about the actual liquid cooling setup that you're getting. This thing, if you bring two more tubes, you buy a little bit more fittings. That's about $20 more. You have a full-fledged custom loop setup already there. So this is kind of like the benefit of buying one of these. The 3090, I mean, it's going to be more powerful than the 6900 XT. Is it going to be $200 more powerful? Obviously not. You might try to ask for a better deal. I have seen just the RTX 3090 with the water block for about $800. So that's another thing to consider. A lot of these people, they're just trying to put in the 4090. They can't use the water block anymore. They can't use their 3090 anymore. They can't even find the original cooler they had. And so they're just trying to get rid of that card. That's definitely something to look into. But to look at this and say, hey, listen, this is an investment for a long-term build, something that will actually run games amazingly, I definitely consider this a good value. So that is all my cards for the used GPU. Now let's just look at the new GPU market and kind of talk about the price of performance there. So the first card I looked at is the RX 7800 XT 16 gigabyte. So this is very similar to this 6800 XT with better overclocking headroom. And that's a really good deal for a lot of people. This is something that might be a deal breaker for a lot of people. I mean, you're getting warranty, you're getting a very nice card, something that isn't going to tax your power supply just as much as the 6900 XT, but for about the same price. So this is something that I would consider very good value. I've looked at the performance. It absolutely destroys the 4070 Ti, and this variant is perfect. I mean, it has some copper on it. You can't go wrong with a power color. There are some other variants that are $700. I just would worry about what you're going to get out of the box, but this is a perfect card for anyone that is trying to game in the new GPU market. Now let's look at something a little bit better. This is the RX 7900 XTX 24 gigabyte card. So, looking back at the RTX 3090, obviously the 3090 price to performance is going to beat this outright. It's only a little bit weaker than this. Obviously, you have a bit better bandwidth than this one, so obviously I would go for that if you're okay with buying used. However, this is the topic that I'm really looking into, and it's getting the best bang for buck OpenCL card, and this is gonna do it. Obviously a 3090 is not really optimized for OpenCL. This is optimized for OpenCL, and that's really what I'm looking at right now. So for video editing purposes, this is a really good card. This one's a really good card. Anything AMD wise will destroy on Vegas. Anything Intel and some mid-range NVIDIA is going to destroy on Adobe Premiere and other applications like that. When you can use CUDA or when you can use H265 or 264, sorry. But for OpenCL, this is going to be perfect. $1,300, so it's about $400 more than the RTX 3090, but the added benefit is you're going to be hitting 3 gigahertz on this card. That's really the big benefit. The boost clock is only 2500. You're talking about a almost 20% megahertz increase, even more than that, I believe, because it's over 700 megahertz on top of this. So we're talking about really the biggest uplifts and overclocking of our generation, of our current generation, or current paradigm, I should say. This is going to give you so much more performance than a 4080. It's going to blow out your 4090 out of the water in terms of bang for buck. Absolutely, obviously. I mean, it's almost the price of a high-end 4070 Ti. Almost the price of it's close to the 4080. It's absolutely incredible how you could buy this today, I believe. And I think it's a gem in the new GPU section. Because if you're looking at a regular XT, you're only saving about $200. So that's really where the performance is. That's really where the bang for buck is. The deal is with this card is that you're getting a little bit more. You're getting quite a bit more performance over the XT for just a little bit more price. I think this card is amazing. Yeah, it's not going to hit 3.3 gigahertz out of the gate, but with the proper VBIOS flash that's going to happen very soon, a flash that will give it to it'll make the card think it is a Nitro card. This is the biggest and most impressive XTX variant. It's also, you know, about $1,000 cheaper than the 4090. But if you flash the pulse with that BIOS, and you put on a water block, which is what I'm trying to do, you know, it's about $150 for a water block on the XTX. I believe this is an incredible deal, an absolute steal, and it's something that I'm considering buying very soon. I'm going from a sub 300 build. I got myself an RX Vega 64 right now, and I'm gonna go all the way up to the brand new card. So it's gonna be pretty impressive. I'm really hoping it pays off, and you know, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I might start doing more doc videos like this, and yeah, hope you guys have a great day.